advantages against devotion decks. But you know, Franco can come out much more aggressive than a typical devotion deck because of Ash Zealot. Uh, also has 4 copies of Stormbreath Dragon, which could prove problematic. But Hammer Perforos is the card that I'm most excited about because when we were testing for Dublin, that was a card that gave our control decks the most fits.
Now, is this the deck that you ended up playing at the Pro Tour or no?
No, I ended up playing Selesnya aggro, but we definitely considered playing this deck. This is a deck that Channel Fireball kind of played. They played green instead of white, but it's very similar. Instead of splashing for Chain to the Rocks and Assemble the Legion, they had Xenagos and Domri Red.
Okay, gotcha.
But the rest of the core of the deck is effectively the same.
Oh, Xenagos is a card whose name I've not said in a long time. As SL, it's going to come across for 2 points of damage here. Now, what I've seen is that actually Blue-White has a hard time against this deck.
Yeah, well, Hammer, the haste creatures and Hammer Perforos can prove very problematic. There's not it can be quite frustrating to deal with those cards, but still, you have Supreme Verdict to deal with all the devotion guys, and you still have Dissolve. Like, Dissolve and Sphinx of Revelations can be very difficult to beat. But Franco has the perfect start here. Turn 2 haste creature, turn 3 hammer. So let's see if Jacob has a detention sphere here.
And hammer is an absolute pain for control decks to be able to deal with. You know, just the fact that he gives all the other creatures haste and they can start pumping out creatures, it's just a control deck's nightmare. He does have a detention sphere for it, but does he want to use it on that, or is he just going to pass?
So it looks like he's not going to use it, and he's keeping up Dissolve mana, and he also has an Azorius Charm here. The problem is that Franco can choose to just start cranking out guys if he wants to. Obviously, he has to be a little bit concerned here about the Azorius Charm and Dissolve. So let's see what Franco decides to play around here.
He's got a Fanatic in his hand. He also has an untapped land, so he could just slam down Fanatic right now, hope that it resolves, deal 5 points of damage, and get in for haste. But with Wilson just having 3 mana up right now, I can't imagine that he thinks, does Franco, that he's good to go.
Yeah, I actually kind of like just attacking for 2 and passing, because then you can make a 3/3 at the end of his turn, kind of give yourself a little more information. But looks like he's just going to go for the Fanatic here. Dissolve comes down, and now you're just going to get attacked for 2. So Franco wasn't really able to capitalize. You see, I think if you just attack with Ash Zealot there, you put a lot of pressure on Jacob. You know, does Jacob use the Azorius Charm on a 2/2 haster? Probably not. He probably wants to keep up that Dissolve mana. So then Franco can just pass the turn, and Jacob's in a much more awkward position. But instead, Franco goes for the Fanatic, which gets countered. And now Jacob has, it looks like a detention sphere is probably going to come down now and just deal with that.
And so now the troublesome permanents are kind of out of the way right now. So Hammer's gone. Ash Zealot is certainly doing some work here. Let's see if there's a follow-up play. He's got a Boros Charm. He's got a Chain of the Rocks. Haste creature would be ideal. There is the, there's a Temple.
Yeah, and Jacob, I think, was okay. He dodged a Stormbreath Dragon, but even if a Stormbreath Dragon came down, he does have a Supreme Verdict in his hand to deal with it. So
does he have the white mana?
That's right. He only has a Azorius Guildgate in play, so he doesn't have double white. He does have a Sphinx of Revelation in his hand, though, so he will be able to draw some cards this turn if he chooses to. Jacob at 12 life now.
Still relatively high, honestly.
Yeah, relatively high, and again, he has that Sphinx of Revelation in his hand, so don't think he's in too much danger right here. Franco looks like he drew another Ash Zealot. He has a Chain to the Rocks, which is basically dead in this matchup.
So, you know, the thing about Blue-White, when you have to play against them, you have to worry about all the open mana. You have to bop and weave your way around the things that they could possibly have. Is it Counter Magic? Is it Azorius Charm? Is it Last Breath? Is it Revelation? You know, what instance do I actually have to worry about? What instance do I care about? As he's going to start, Will Franco, with another copy of Ash Zealot.
And I think Jacob's okay with letting that resolve. He's going to take 4 here, drop to 8, but then he can gain 2, go back up to 10, try to dig for that Supreme Verdict. Here's the question, though. Do you want a chance not drawing a white source?
Yeah, it's pretty risky, and it's also a baby revelation, too. Your first revelation is just going to be 2, so it's a glorified divination at this point. That's not really all that exciting.
He could only cast one of the Azorius Charms in his hand because, he doesn't have access to double white. So it looks like he is just going to take 4 and just try to draw 2 cards here, I guess. Could potentially just cycle an Azorius Charm, too, just to try to maintain. But I think he needs to just draw as many cards as he can, try to get into that double white as soon as possible.
So Revelation for 2 is going to resolve here for Wilson. Again, one of the nice things about Blue-White is they have so many basic lands that a lot of lands are going to come into play on tap. But I don't think he found the white again.
Didn't find the white, but does have a detention sphere.
That's
so
pretty good.
Even better. plays a Mutavault, now plays a Tensphere, deals with both of the Ash Zealots. And again, doesn't have a counterspell, so he's still a little bit vulnerable to Stormbreath Dragon here, but looks like, oh, Franco drew another dead card in Mizian Mortars. So Mizian Mortars chained to the rocks, terrible against blue-white control, especially this particular build. So Jacob looking really good now because now he can cast Revelations for 4.
Yeah, Wilson's got to love his game state right now. He's sitting at 10 life. He's got a bunch of lands in play, and even though he doesn't have double white, everything else is going okay. As now Boris Reckner is going to show up to the party, and now there's a Revelation, so that's going to be for 4 this go around.
Yeah, Jacob can Revelation for 4. He could, if he draws a white, look, it looks like he did get a Plains. He can cast Supreme Verdict, or he could just say, I don't care about it because I have double Azorius Charm anyway. So Jacob probably just going to content to just discard down to 7 cards and pass the turn back.
Oh, now he's discarding white sources now, the S2.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I don't need these anymore.
So Franco looks like with 2 dead cards along with a land in his hand, it's going to be difficult for him to mount an attack here. Really doesn't have much going on here. Now he's going to have to draw another Boros Reckoner, that same Boros Reckoner next turn. So
yeah, and this is where Azorius Charm is so backbreaking, right? Because, you know, a lot of times you can cycle it, but now it's just, okay, draw that Boros Reckoner again, a card that I don't even really care about in this matchup. It's actually acting as a time walk.
Yeah, and now Jacob's going to cast another huge Revelations for 6 here. And, yeah, this is where the blue-white control deck just starts to move further and further away. It has a firm, it can't win very quickly, but you certainly don't feel like you're winning on the other side of the board.
Yeah, I mean, when they have that many cards?
Yeah, you know it's just basically this game is just slowly but surely just moving further and further into Jacob's grasp to the point where Franco just won't be able to do anything. And eventually Jacob is either going to draw an Elspeth and lock the game away with that, or just use the Elixir Mortality to rebuy all his counter spells and removal and everything.
Yeah, you see Wilson just discarding Lance at this point. He's ready. He's ready again to, you know, cast another Azorius Charm, put that Reckoner back on top. He has the Detention Sphere on a Verdict if he cares about anything that Franco's going to do, and eventually he'll find himself a way to win the game. That's, and, you know, that's the thing about this deck is eventually I'll kill you.
Yeah, and this is kind of where I like the green splash version of this deck as opposed to the white, because Domri Red can act as removal spell against certain decks, and sometimes it's even better against weenie decks if you have Boros Reckoner than Chain to the Rock. So, and plus you can actually cast it off of Burning Tree Emissary, so that your mana is a little bit better when you splash green. Now, I thought the mono red devotion deck when splashing green, I actually thought that matchup against blue-white control was much better because obviously Domri is a huge upgrade in the matchup.
Yep.
But unfortunately for Franco, he just has too many dead cards game 1, it looks like, and he just can't compete with cards like Strange Revelation from Jacob's deck.
Yeah, every single time he draws Mizian Mortars or Chain to the Rocks, and he has 4 mortars and 3, he has 3 mortars and 3 chains. He has 6 dead draws in his deck. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, so Boros Reckoner comes down yet again, and Jacob basically just going to be playing this long game here, still going to be slowly digging for that Elspeth or, you know, Elixir, but
it's going to be a Stormbreath Dragon. Unfortunately for Franco, there's no way that's resolving.
Well, he
might,
he could let it resolve. He's just going to take 4 and then cast Supreme Verdict.
Yeah,
so now he doesn't have to keep worrying about that Boros Reckoner.
Sure.
Yeah, at 16, because of all those Sphinx Revelations, it's nowhere nearly.
I forgot his life total was so high.
Yep. And it doesn't look like Jacob really even cares about attacking with Mutavaults here. Generally, you just see the blue-white control player. Those Mutavaults are more of a blocker than anything else, really.
Yeah, I like how this deck just puts you in the sleeper hold.
Yeah.
That's all. Okay, you'll give up eventually. At some point, you're just going to get disgusted with how many cards I have and how many counter spells, and you can't do anything.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the blue-white control player just hopes that their opponent just concedes.
Yeah, it's like, do I really have to go through the motions?
Come on,
I got 5 counter spells.
You know you're not winning this.
Yeah, that's how it feels sometimes. There's only one Mutavault's going to come across now. Going to leave the other one back.
All right, so Jacob now did draw the Elixir too.
Oh, boy.
Franco. Yeah.
Can I see what you're going to shuffle in? Oh, just 3 revs, couple of lands, some removal spells. Yikes.
And you're going to gain 5 life? Sure. Okay. So Franco now trying to. The problem is there's not many cards that Franco can top deck, and the sequence of cards that he would need to draw, it's probably like, well, there's one of them. That's obviously a good draw, but clearly Jacob has a fistful of counterspells, and he might not even want to, but. Yeah, at this point, I think he's just going to start to scrying a little bit, sculpt the perfect hand, and he kept the card on top, too.
Jeez.
So
What is this card? Oh,
And
okay.
it's Elspeth.
Okay, that's
So
a good card to
at
keep
this
up there.
point, you'd imagine a concession is in short order here.
Yep. The Planeswalker is going to come into play. They've only got one of those in their deck, but now the Soldier tokens are going to start rolling out. As you see, Wilson's going to rearrange his board a little bit, get everything nice and easy. He's got a bunch of counter spells. 3 soldiers will be coming in to play momentarily. And he can clean up the game as only Elspeth knows how.
Well, Franco can't overload Mizzy Mortars to deal with those 3 tokens at least. So the Mizzy Mortars, when I said they were dead, correction, they can technically kill Elspeth.
You lied to our audience. That's what you did. Chain of the Rocks isn't dead either. It can take care of it. It can take care of a token too.
So they, by definition, they are technically not dead.
Yeah.
However, they're probably the worst cards you could imagine drawing in this matchup.
Yes, they are. And those 6 will go to the bench pretty fast when we move to the sideboarding game here. But it's just it's an uphill climb. I think Franco got off to a nice start, but he just didn't get a lot of use out of his hammer. He ran that Fanatic into a dissolve, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, again, the way the game played out, I'm not sure there's much Franco could have done. However, I do think that turn 4, had he just attacked with Ash Zealot first, seen what Jacob did, I think Jacob just takes 2. And then I think he should pass and just start activating the hammer. Imagine if Jacob just attention sphere is there and you have a 3/3 in play plus a 2/2, and then you can cast your Fanatic Amalgus. The whole game state just changes. So I think that turn was probably the critical turn for Franco.
And especially when Wilson was fumbling around with white mana, not able to get to Supreme Verdict.
Exactly, yeah. Because when your blue-white control player, when your blue-white control opponent passes with 3 mana up, you have to think something's up. You can't just tap out into a counterspell there.
Yeah.
It could be Syncopate, it could be Dissolve. So I think your best bet there is to just attack and pass. But instead, we're in the position we are in now where Jacob is basically in firm control of this game.
Yeah, I mean, this game has gone exactly how he wanted to. He's got to draw a lot of cards, play a lot of land, gain a bunch of life, going to draw 2 more cards via Divination. He's got Elixir and Elspeth into play. If Cunio's watching at home, he's smiling from ear to ear. This is exactly how his deck operates when it's working.
Yeah,
he couldn't be happier.
Classic Cunio.
Yeah,
classic
really
Cunio
is.
hardlock.
I remember one of Cunio's blue-white decks from the last season, where it, like, the only way it could win was just like it had like a Karn.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it would just put you in a Karn submission.
Well, you know what the funny thing is, Cunio, I guess, to these players today, he's really known for these types of blue-white control deck. He built the Bant deck that Reed Duke had success with at the other Invitational. He obviously built this deck. So I think a lot of players know him for these sort of blue-white based control decks that grind out these really long games. But I know him for these weird decks that he used to play back in the day. I mean, we used to play together for Team CMU and Target back in the day, and he built these crazy decks. Like, he built a black-red zombie infestation deck that exploited cards that none of our viewers probably even know about, but it was this crazy deck. And then he built a Psychotog deck that he was one of the first people to really abuse Upheaval Psychotog, and he even had zombie infestation in the sideboard of that deck too. So he used to build much more aggressive decks. I think maybe his old age is making him a little softer, and he likes these long, drawn-out walks in the park type deck. You know?
You see Supreme Verdict's going to clear up the board here. Now 3 more soldiers are going to come into play for Wilson, sitting at a healthy 16. The Fanatic from Franco did go towards the Elspeth. It was able to deal 3 to it, put it from 6 down to 3. It's currently at 4, on its way up to 5 momentarily.
So Franco drops to 10 here from the Elspeth tokens, and we're going to get 3 more soldiers in play. And, yep, Jacob just does not want to attack with those Mutavaults. He's just happy just casting a Jace, playing a land, passing. He's got multiple counterspells in his hand along with the Tension Sphere. So Franco finally says, I've had enough.
Yeah, no
Not
more.
interested anymore.
Please, no more. You're boring me to death, Wilson, as he is going to concede this game. So blue-white control up a game here over red-white Devotion. But I'm going to let you go to the sideboard first, because he's going to need to board out those 6 cards in Mizzium Mortars and Chain of the Rocks and get in some real action.
Well, again, I'm not sure if it's enough to swing the matchup totally in his favor, but it definitely gets a lot better for him. He basically has up to 13 cards that he could reasonably be board in here. He has 2 copies of Assemble the Legion, 2 copies of Wear Tear, 3 copies of Boros Charm, 3 copies of Chandra's Phoenix, 4 Fire Drinker Satyrs, and 1 more Hammer of Perforos. Now, Assemble the Legion, that's an interesting card. It's obviously at its best against a deck like Mono Black Devotion. I'm not quite sure you really want it against blue-white control, to be honest, because it's answered by the Tension Sphere, it's answered by Jace Architect the Thought, And I just don't know if it's a card that you really want compared to the rest of the sideboard. Though I think I'd want all those cards. I like bringing in Fire Drinker Satyr. You know, it's a one drop. It fuels your devotion, and especially if you're on the play, you know, sometimes just going Fire Drinker Satyr, Ash Zealot against a deck like Blue White Control, they might just not be ready for it. So I like the Fire Drinker Satyr. I like bringing in the third Hammer Perforos. Obviously, that card's really great. Same thing with Challenger's Phoenix. You know, it goes along with your plan. Fire Drinker Satyr, Ash Zealot, Challenger's Phoenix. That's the kind of curve that you might not be expecting from a deck like this. You know, same thing with the Boros Charm. Boros Charm can go to the face. It can also protect your creatures from Supreme Verdict. So if you're going for that sort of Fire Drinker Satyr Phoenix plan, I would also bring in the Boros Charm. And obviously, 2 copies of Wear and Tear, very effective at dealing with the Tension Sphere, which is one of the few ways that Jacob has to deal with the Hammer Perforos.
Could also see Jacob boarding in the 1 Python Needle in the sideboard too, which Wear Tear can take care of. You know, if it's going to lock down a hammer.
Yeah.
Of that nature, because I expect him to bring that in. Other cards that Jacob has access to: 1 Negate, 3 Gainsay, 2 Dispel, 2 Celestial Flare, 2 Last Breath, a Jace Memory Adept, 2 copies of Fiendslayer Paladin, and 1 copy of Glare of Heresy. Fiendslayer Paladin, a very easy one to bring in. He is playing against a red deck after all. 2 Last Breath, got plenty of targets. He doesn't know that he's going to have a lot more targets after sideboard with the Phoenix and the Fire Drinker Satyrs. Celestial Flare, pretty good against Storm Breath Dragon. Can line up kind of poorly, though, once Franco does go on this more aggressive plan of, you know, playing a lot of spells early. Dispel's okay. Gainsay's obviously not for this matchup, and Negate is okay. I'm not sure if he's going to want those cards, but he has plenty of cards to bring in again with 2 Flares, 2 Last Breaths, 2 Fiendslayer Paladins, and a Python Needle.
Yeah, I like Negate only because of how good Hammer Perforos can be. If you have, especially being on the draw, I think you want a way to stop that turn 3, because we've had draws in testing where we went turn 2 Ash Zealot, turn 3 Burning Tree Emissary, Hammer Bogarden, a Hammer of Perforos. You know, you need some way, you'd like some way to stop that, which Negate obviously does. Can also stop a Wear and Tear, obviously, and can counter his Assemble Legion if you think he's bringing that in as well. So I think Negate's fine there. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it gets too much worse for Jacob, but it really comes down to whether or not Franco draws that right combination of sideboard cards at the right time. Fire Drinker Satyr not nearly as good on turn 6 as it is on turn 1.
I'm inclined to agree with you.
So it's a gamble. I think it's a gamble that he has to take, but again, having only 4 1-drops in your deck, you're not guaranteed to have it in your opening hand. So it's one of those things where it's a cute strategy. I'm just not sure, you know, how effective it's going to be against Jacob, because I think Jacob's going to bring in those Last Breaths.
Oh, I definitely think he's going to bring in.
So that obviously works out well. Also, Fiendslayer Paladin, another card that can put a wrinkle into this plan. So.
The other thing, too, something that we saw Joe Lissette do last weekend as he was working his way towards the title in Oakland, is he brought in Last Breath against these Red-White to Ocean decks just to be able to target his own guys.
Yeah.
Target an Elspeth token, target a Mutavault if you have to. Yeah, it does. You know, Mutavault does get removed from the game, but, you know, Elspeth can get the job done by itself, as Jacob demonstrated in that last game. So the goal, as usual, is to just not die.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe this Fire Drinker Satyr plan would be better suited against a deck like Esper. Maybe he just wants to go big with the Assemble Legion Perforos plan.
I mean, I'm kind of with you, though, where I don't love Assemble Legion in this matchup. I mean, I get it. Like, it can be good, but the answers are also pretty good from Wilson's sides, too. Again, Jace just trumps it immediately, as does Detention Sphere. But then, you know, maybe Franco's plan is to overload the Detention Sphere so that, you know, it actually does have an effect on the game. As you see, Franco's going to take a look at his opening hand here. Doesn't look like he has a lot of lands.
He does have he has a Sacred Foundry and a Nykthos. Unfortunately, and it looks like he did go for that plan. He has a Boros Charm, Fire Drinker Satyr. He could curve into Fire Drinker Satyr, Ash Zealot. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a second red source. He has a Nykthos. That is his second land. So, but it looks like he did keep. He's going to go for it. He thinks he has to get a little bit lucky here to get the perfect draw. But
no gamble.
No gamble, no future. So he's going to take 2, playing a Sacred Foundry, and Fire Drinker Satyr will enter play. Azorius Guildgate from Jacob. Does he draw the second red? No, he draws a Perforos. Wow. So a little unlucky there for Franco. Franco's just going to have to pump there. Looks like he's going to pump for 2. And he's going to take 2, going to 16.
Now Wilson's going to go down to 17. So past the turn. See, Wilson says, I'm gonna take care of that in a minute.
Yeah, he's got it looks like he's got
oh boy,
Celestial Flare in his hand. So no, still, wow, no third mana at all for Franco here. He has a Boros Charm, which he can't cast. He has a Frostborn Weird he can't cast. He has a Ash Zealot that he can't cast. So Franco in a tough spot right here because Jacob does have an answer. He has the Last Breath for Fire Drink Crusader, and yeah, tough spot for Franco here.
If you're Franco, no pumps ever. Ooh, no attack. Does not want to get
Afraid
his
of
Azorius Charm.
Yeah, you can't get Azorius Charm
Yeah.
if you're stuck on 2 mana here. So,
And he just drew
and
one.
Jacob just drew an Azorius Charm. So, let's see what Franco gets to muster here. Oh wow,
Is that a Mortars?
is that a Mortars? He left in Mortars, eh? Interesting. So, looks like yeah, still no third land here, and Franco looks like he's gonna have to pass again with no play.
And he's just falling right into Jacob Wilson's plan, obviously.
And I wonder why he kept in Mortars. Maybe did he think that Jacob boarded in Precinct Captain? We know some blue-white decks could do that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
some do, but I mean, it just depends on how informed Franco is, right? Where, if he's used to seeing Huey Jensen's list as he draws another Porphyros and not a land, that they don't have creatures in their sideboard to bring in some Mortars isn't really going to get to kill anything. It's
Yeah.
discard a Porphyros and pass the turn.
Really, the only creature that most of these decks have been running are Fiendslayer Paladin, which you can't target with it anyway. So.
Sacred Foundry off the top means that he can start to play Magic.
Yeah. So. Franco now can actually activate Nykthos if he ever gets to that point, but more importantly, he can catch Ash Zealot or Frostborn Weird now.
He's got some serious catching up to do. I don't know if he has a Burning Tree Emissary over there or not.
I like just playing Frostburn here. Yeah, so if you haven't been attacking, then you're not going to want to attack this turn. So I think you're better off just getting more Devotion guys out there. Probably gonna get blown out by Supreme Verdict, but there's not much you can do about that.
Yeah.
So.
Gonna attack here after Wilson did cycle his Azorius Charm, thinking basically I don't think you have another one, and he's right. Last Breath is gonna take care of the Fire Drinker. Franco's gonna move up to 19, which Wilson obviously doesn't care about because his deck doesn't care about the opponent's life total.
So Jacob does draw a Supreme Verdict, and he's gonna pass the turn back. He's got access to Syncopate in his hand. Looks like he also has a Celestial Flare, along with the Sphinx's Revelation. So let's see what Franco can do. It looks like he drew another Nykthos. So he will be stuck on 3 mana, but if he can get an Ash Zealot into play, those Nykthos can be generate a lot of mana for him.
He starts by just attacking for 1, no pumps, and what he can do, of course, is tap the Nykthos for mana and then play a duplicate Nykthos, because those Nykthos are never really going to grow out of control in this matchup.
Yeah, but he doesn't have enough Devotion in play for that to be really generate him any mana. So
Oh yeah, I mean just tap Nykthos for colorless mana.
Yeah.
Just the 1 mana, and then play the new one, and then you can actually get up to 4 mana for the turn, which is what he's going to do, and then he can try to resolve a Perforos. And we know it's not going to resolve unless Wilson wants to do because he has a counter spell in his hand, multiples of them in fact, and Syncopate's going to take care of that.
So yeah, Syncopate takes care of Perforos, and Franco passes the turn back here, and another Mutavault drawn for Jacob. So now. Let's see here. It looks like Jacob does have a negate as well as a stuff here. So this will be interesting here. If Franco decides to attack, Jacob can activate Mutavault block. If Franco pumps and wastes a turn, then Jacob can cast Celestial Flare.
There's a Temple of Triumph. Take a look at the top card here. See where Franco wants to put that one. It looks like he's deciding to put it onto the bottom.
Yeah, so at this point in the game, it's tough for Franco's strategy to kind of pay off because he didn't do nearly enough damage early on for cards like Fanatic and Hammer to kind of finish things off. So Ash Zealot looks like it's going to enter play here.
Yeah, Jacob says that's fine. Come and get it. A little surprised the Mutavault doesn't get tough there.
Mutavault could easily block here because Franco already played a land for turn. But he wants to cast Sphinx's Revelation.
Figured it out.
Good choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, Sphinx is for 4, goes up to 17, and wow, draws another Revelation, and has that Supreme Verdict still. So probably going to see that this turn.
So we're going to do big, bigger, and biggest Revelation, most likely this game as well, as there is your verdict for the 2-for-1. And, oh wow, tough guy Mutavault, able to get in an attack.
I like that play.
Wilson's going to be able to leave a Celestial Flare and negate right now.
Yeah, so maybe almost baiting Franco into casting a Stormbreath Dragon or something, thinking that he won't have a dissolve around it. So Franco does have a 5th land here. So we know he has a Boros Charm in his hand, and we know he has that Mizia Mortis. Mizia Mortis just, I'm really surprised that he boarded that card or kept that card in rather. But so Mizzy Mortar's Boros Charm, Sacred Foundry is going to come into play now. It looks like it's going to come into play untapped. Takes 2, drops to 15, and now looks like he's playing around Syncopate. So that's what he's playing around here. Looks like he's going to cast that Fanatic. So Fanatic comes down. Jacob's okay with that. It's only going to be for 1 damage.
Yeah,
So
I can't imagine that he minds too much about that
yeah.
Fanatic. I mean, Franco's got to start somewhere, and Fanatic is a card that you know is going to resolve, and it's just for 1.
Yeah.
And then you can maybe try to build towards Devotion that way. Speaking of Devotion, Owen Turtenwald did win his match with Mono Black Devotion when he was sitting at 8-1, so he's in the top 8 for tomorrow.
Oh, so he moves in the top 8 and 9-1, probably a 1 or 2 seed too. So Franco draws a Burning Tree Emissary, so he, will help out a little bit more with that Nykthos, but unfortunately, the Fanatic is already in play, so he's not going to be able to get any benefit from that. But still has that Boros Charm, so he does have Supreme Verdict protection somewhat. But Jacob does have that negate, so he could overexpose himself a little bit.
Here is the Burning Tree Emissary. I believe it's going to start.
It's possible. Does he have another Perforos in his hand? I don't know.
I know he discarded 1 early, and he has.
He has 3 Perforos in his deck. I wasn't sure if he had one in his hand, so it doesn't look like he does. I think it's just that. Wow. Ugh. So a huge Sphinx Revelation here. And I forget who said it, but I think somebody said that the best thing about playing 4 Sphinx Revelation is when you cast 1, you're more likely to just draw another. Well, you just want to keep chaining Sphinx Revelation.
With my limited Esper experience from earlier this year in Seattle and then playing the Invitational in Indiana, yeah, it's true. You just want to keep drawing them because it's like the best feeling ever when you just chain them together.
So here we go. Sphinx Supreme Verdict gets cast, Boros Charm response, and then Syncopate will take care of that. So both those creatures die, and now Franco, I think, is just left with the Mizzy Mortars and possibly a land. So Franco draws a card, and it looks like it is a Challenger's Phoenix. So that'll give him something to do here. But Jacob does have Celestial Fair if he chooses to. No need to though. He's at 22 life. He has a Last Breath too. So Last Breath's going to get cast post combat. Or is this mid-combat thing? I think
it might be mid-combat.
Yeah, I think it might be mid-combat. Not sure if he wanted to leave a counterspell up. So, okay, Last Breath removes Challenger's Phoenix from the game, so Franco won't be able to actually do any kind of shenanigans getting it back.
And see Wilson moves the 2 Mutavaults over with the rest of his lands.
Yeah, it looks like he might start swinging with those Mutavaults. He might be a little bit more aggressive. But no, he's just going to pass.
You loved that first time it got in. That may have been a one-time thing for just for the audience at home.
Yeah, so it looks like he just wants to cast another giant Sphinx Revelation here. So, yeah, 3 Sphinx Revelation in both of these games. So backbreaking. And, yep, taps all the mana.
This is the Boston Crab. The Walls of Jericho, whatever submission move is your favorite from the WWE. This is what this is right now. The first revelation, the second, this is the third one. This is the one that oftentimes earns the concession and the tap out. It's just too much to overcome. If he ever finds the Elspeth, it's just over.
Yeah. So there's a Jace. So that's one annoying card to deal with.
Yeah.
And he's gonna just uptake it there. And now.
Oh, there you go.
Mutavault's coming.
Give the people what they want. Get in there with that Mutavault.
He also has a Python Needle as well. So looks like he's going to just discard down to 7 cards here. Mostly land. Probably has to do a spell. So there's that Python Needle.
You can certainly tell that Wilson is comfortable playing this kind of Magic too.
Ooh, so Wear and Tear is drawn by Franco, but that's not really going to do anything in this game.
Yeah, no D-Spheres out there right now. Can't take care of future D-Spheres, assuming that Wilson doesn't have counter magic. But sitting at 28 life and a boatload of cards, I can't imagine that he really cares about anything that Franco does at this point.
Yeah, Jacob has Franco on a 4-turn clock with those Mutavaults.
If he attacks with them.
If he attacks with them, which I expect him to, unless he draws another Sphinx Revelation.
Yeah, in which case, definitely resolve that. Find your elixir, shuffle them all back in, and do it again. Jace is going to tick up to 6. Hiya! Mutavaults are going to come into the red zone. Put Franco down to 11. Any other plays here from the young master?
And there's a Fiendslayer Paladin. Okay. So the clock has been reduced by a turn, and Boros Charm looks like it's going to just go after Jace here, take it down to 2.
That gets a thumbs up from Jacob.
And Frostburn Weird is the draw. So yeah, the hand is Frostburn Weird, Mizium Mortars, and Wear and Tear. So pretty bad hand here for Franco. Not sure he's going to be able to. Three Rings of Revelation is tough enough to beat, but that hand certainly isn't the hand that's going to do it. So let's see what. Looks like we, yeah, 2 mana for Frostburn Weird here. Yep, Frostburn is going to come down. Jacob, I think, is probably okay with that. Really no reason to counter it. He does have the Detention Sphere, so let's see if the Wear and Tear plays a role here. Nope, he's just going to attack with everything.
Yeah, as I think he should, honestly. I'll just turn everybody
Oh,
sideways.
he has Azorius Charm.
Yeah.
So Azorius Charm is probably going to put the Frostburn Weird on top of Franco's deck, which is huge because obviously it takes another draw away from Franco.
Yeah. Just playing the role of a Time Walk. You see Franco suddenly decide, do I block, do I not block, what have you. And now Azorius Charm's just going to put it back on top of his deck. So that's going to do it. Jacob Wilson is going to win this match in rather convincing fashion. Blue-White Control moves on to 9-1. So 2 big-name players are going to be in our top 8 tomorrow morning in Jacob Wilson and Owen Turtenwald.